Welcome to One in the Trenches podcast. My name is Johnny Jones. This is Patrick Kaplan. We're here today to break down some Week 4 action and preview Week 5 matchups. Where do you want to start, Patch?
We can start with last week's games. I want to talk about how bad you and I were both against the spread.
Bad.
Really, really bad. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. You and I split them going 3 and 6. Actually, which isn't that bad, but if we were to bet one unit on each of them, because everything's minus 110, we would have technically lost money.
Yeah.
So that brings you up to speed. You're 17 for 31, which really isn't that bad, Johnny. And I'm 16 for 31, which means I'd be very, very close to dead even money. Neither of us got our cheesecake picks of the week. Both absolutely brutal losses.
I got screwed out of
You got screwed more than I did, but I certainly got screwed.
Yeah, that Hail Mary. So we can start with, I guess, if we're going to talk about the cheesecake bet, the Colorado Baylor game. That was just such a heartbreakingly frustrating loss.
I was blown away. I thought Dave Arianda was coaching for his job there, and I thought Baylor looks pretty good this year. So I was very, very surprised to see Colorado compete really well. They obviously had that all-star Travis Hunter who played outside of his mind. 140 snaps and whatnot, which is remarkable. But that was a tough one because they had the Hail Mary at the end and then follow that up with the goal line stop, literally at like the
the half yard line. They just knocked the ball out. Yeah, no, that's Travis Hunter. Everyone's talking about him. We don't need to say anything that people haven't already said. But man, that was a tough loss for me. What about your game?
Yeah, Michigan State, I think they're still a really, really good team. BC does nothing but surprise me week in and week out. I don't know if they're going to be there for the ACC, but, I thought Michigan State's a really tough team, not a team I would want to play. And I'd go as far as say, Ohio State's got their first test of the year in Michigan State. But, I thought BC played really well. So neither of us get points on that one, Johnny. I'm still up 11-3 on you going into this week. While we're talking about some teams, we had some really interesting games starting with Friday night. We had Nebraska versus Illinois. I don't think anyone and their mother predicted that game to go the way it did. One of the things I absolutely love to do is live bet. And I have a theory with live betting that when you watch the games, you have a better ability to understand where the game's going to go just by feel, tempo, momentum, things like that. And I was able to put a live bet on Illinois. I just liked the way it was going. I thought that the pumped up action out of Nebraska was going to cool off. Very, very surprised the game went the way it did, but also not at the same time.
Yeah, I think Illinois is a very solid team. I think it's the best word to describe them. I think they've got a very talented defense, and I think they have enough talent on the outside at wide receiver to really make enough plays in a game. Luke Altmaier, he doesn't make mistakes. He's not wicked flashy, but he doesn't
have an interception, I don't think, this year, does he?
No, he hasn't turned the ball over to the air. And he's very solid, doesn't make mistakes, and just does enough. And, that's a game where I feel like Nebraska is probably more talented on them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But you let a team hang around. And I think Illinois is a very old team. They've got a lot of guys that played a lot of college football. And if you let teams like that stick around, they're gonna be a problem. And I think that's
the game kind of came down to that one play in the end zone.
Yeah,
which was a remarkably good play. Probably could have been top 1 on the ESPN's top 10 the next morning because his ability, I didn't know this going into that, was that a tie goes to the offense. I did not know that. Both teams catch it. It goes to the offense, which I think is a BS.
It's kind of a crazy rule.
All you got to do is get a hand on there, and it's technically a tie.
Crazy.
You and I talked about it a bunch. What defines a catch?
No, I have no idea.
One of the most subjective things on earth, because I think it's still defined as a football move. So tucking it, moving your head a certain way, planting your foot in a direction to make a cut, it's a remarkably subjective.
Well, I think what's also remarkably subjective is the whole just, I don't know what you want to call it, saying indisputable evidence for any call. It's football's the only thing in the entire world where it's what they call that second is so.
I think that's trying to stay along with the old heads who are there shouldn't be any cameras. It's
yeah.
Well, there should be. We have the technology to be nearly perfect on all calls.
Yeah.
We're not far out from it in baseball. And someone made a good joke. When's the last time you saw them bring out the chains?
No, I have no idea.
Long time for me, unless it's high school. The only time that I can really remember, but. Now that they have the technology, might as well let it rip. I think that, those small little differences can change the game. But yeah, that was a remarkably fun game to watch.
I thought Raiola
I
still
really like
looked good.
Illinois. If I was you, Johnny, and I know you're going to this game this weekend,
Yeah.
right? I'd be
Yeah.
very, very nervous.
No, I'm nervous. We can preview it later, or we can preview it now, whatever you want. But we can talk about it later when we talk about week 5. But I'm definitely a little nervous. I think I'm excited. I'm excited to be in that stadium. I think it's going to be electric. I'm pumped. They made it a 7:30 kickoff. That was like decided like late last week. They decided like night game. It's going to be pretty electric, especially because Brett Bielema he's kind of talking down the
Is game
crowd.
day there?
No, big game day. I think it's Bama, Georgia.
Bama. Yeah, definitely in Bama. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be electric. And then moving on to our ACC matchup, at the beginning of the year, I thought this game was going to go very different than it was. NC State versus Clemson started out, I think, Clemson was a 17-point favorite, ended as a 20-point favorite, and they ended up winning by 24. It ended up being a little bit closer near the end, but at one point it was like a 35-point game.
Yeah, no, I know NC State's defenses look bad this year, but I really didn't think they looked that bad. Like 59 points to Clemson's offense is crazy because we've talked about it, like I think every episode about how disappointing Clemson's been on the offensive side of the ball.
Are you going to still stick with that? You still think they're disappointing?
What, just because of one game?
I see 2 games.
Yeah.
Clemson and App State. App State's not that bad of a team. I just think they're not catching their stride. But you're talking, they have almost 130 points in 2 games.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just have such a bad taste in my mouth from that Georgia game, that 3-point performance.
What's tough for me is that, Clemson's in this status, and I can list a couple teams that are like this, where if they don't blow teams out, or in the biggest games of the season, aren't playing a one-possession game or coming down to the last play, everyone says it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's the same way. Ohio State's the same way. Oregon's the same way. Oregon had 3 really good wins back to back to back. And people were saying that they shouldn't even be in the top 15 after weeks 1 and 2. But they're really, really good wins. And I think that, at some point you got to count, and I always hate the when is winning not enough conversation. It's like, well, it should be enough. There's always obstacles, and finding a way to win is a really tough thing to do in college football week in and week out, multiple tough games in a row. But, I don't know. I'm kind of flipping my opinion on Clemson. I would never trust them in a big game right now. But I am overly impressed just because they did the exact same thing that Tennessee did. In just a few moments, I want to talk about how impressed I was by Tennessee. So it'd be a little bit hypocritical if I was like, yeah, they're still not impressive. But they put more points on the field than Tennessee did.
Don't get me wrong. Before the season, Clemson was my ACC pick, and I still think they have a great chance just because how up in the air the whole conference is. But I don't know. I just think that defense has been there the whole season. I know that was a super big win, but once again, like NC State hasn't looked great this year, so I'm a little hesitant to put 59 points as Cade Klubnik is now the future. But
I'd like to go as far as I think they went from a sinking ship to they're kind of just starting up the train engines here a little bit. I think that I'm kind of expecting some good things. The ACC is not a great conference. I'm not overly impressed by them. I like Miami. I don't love Miami. I do think they're really, really solid defensively, which is very important. But I do think that the ACC is kind of up there for the grabbing because that Georgia game doesn't even come down into the ACC rankings.
No, and this is what I wanted to ask you on the pod today was, say Miami sputters, drops 1 or 2. Say the winner of the ACC drops 2 games. They still have a top 4 spot, right?
Yeah.
Because that's crazy.
That's what's wrong with it, though, and that's why everyone's like, all right, you have the top 4 spots, which is the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, the ACC champion, and the Big 12 champion. Yeah. Those are automatic. And everyone keeps saying that the ACC and the Big 12 are only getting 1 team in. And I still think that that's a little bit ridiculous because I want to say it was 3 years ago, the Big 12 had a champion who had 2 or 3 losses. It's like they're going to throw in automatically a 2 or 3 loss team. I still think that an ACC and a Big 12 team should get in. But it shouldn't be an automatic bid like that.
No, I agree with that.
Because there's teams that are going to cannibalize themselves, there's conferences that are going to cannibalize themselves. And like, what are you going to do because the top 4 are set automatically by winning the conference championship, and then from there they'll obviously rank on the Big 10, SEC, and then ACC, Big 12. But where I'm going with this is that let's say Clemson drops another one, but it somehow wins the title, and K-State drops another one, somehow wins the Big 12. We have now 2 teams that are in the top 4 who have 2 losses, while you have Tennessee who has 1 loss that won't be in the top 5. You
Yeah.
have Notre Dame with one loss; they won't be in the top 5. And then you have JMU, who's going to be our number one non-power 4 team that makes it in, who has 0 losses.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be very, very interesting. I think no matter what the system is, there's gonna be situations like this, but I think that's definitely a huge problem. But,
I don't love when they put these rules in concrete. And JJ Watt said it last year on a tweet. He basically said that, like, last year after Florida State won and Alabama won, it should have been an emergency, like, contradiction of the previous rules. The 6 teams should get in. And I'm
yeah.
not saying that would be a little bit much, but I don't love how they're like, this is how it's going to be year in and year out, when you could have an absolutely terrible Big Ten champion one year.
Yeah. No,
And they're
yeah.
going to get 1 through 4.
Mhm. No, I think giving them that bye would just be totally unfair. You wanna move on to the Tennessee-Oklahoma game?
Yeah, so we have.
But we're back talking Tennessee, Oklahoma. What do you think, Patch?
While I think that Tennessee played really, really well, I have to accredit it a little bit to Oklahoma playing really, really bad. And Josh Pate famously said that Mizzou is going to look really, really good and not be that good. Oklahoma is going to look really bad and not be that bad, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense. Where I'm going with that is I completely disagree. I thought that Oklahoma looked unprepared. I thought they looked cruddy. I thought they had no offensive identity, had no offensive game plan. You're talking, this is the game that's going to project you into a really good season or barely one of those first bowl games in like the second week of December type game.
Yeah.
And they had 3 turnovers. So Tennessee would turn it over and Oklahoma immediately turned it right back over.
Mhm.
Just shows that, Brett Venables does not get them ready for sudden change
No.
and, was not ready offensively. The game was only, I think, 12 points. It felt like the entire time it could have been 35 points at any moment.
Yeah, no, I really think that was, like, the most low-key blowout I've ever seen, and I
Yeah.
think we can maybe say, Tennessee is great. Tennessee has the defense. They've got a stud defense. I think on offense, they didn't wanna show too much. Also, Josh Heupel, Oklahoma guy, maybe didn't wanna just totally lay it on to his guys, but at the same time, I think in 3 years, Brent Venables has totally changed the identity of Oklahoma and probably for the worst. Because if you
Yeah.
think about Lincoln Riley, high-flying offenses, you think about some pretty bad defenses, Brent Venables, defensive-minded guy. He's got a mediocre defense right now, probably more talented than they're showing, but man, on offense are they bad.
I give those like, defensive-minded coaches, offensive-minded coaches, only so much leeway before you're saying they're neglecting certain parts of their team, right?
Yeah,
And for the longest time, we were saying Lincoln Riley cannot form a defense, does not know how to coach a defense, cannot coach a team that has any semblance of toughness. And we'll talk about them in a little bit, but, when he first took the job, I said, this is one of the best hires I've ever seen. He was the highest paid assistant in college football at Clemson, making like $4.5 million a year. He goes there. They have I think a 6-5 season or 5-6 season. He
yeah,
loses to Texas 52-0. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, he has no idea what he's doing. And then the other half is he got killed by the transfer portal, everyone going to USC. Comes back in year 2, starts out 5-0, and then, goes into Texas. I think that's a neutral site, the Red River
yeah,
Showdown.
yeah, it is.
Wins a crazy game, and then immediately drops one to Oklahoma State or UCF, one of the two, but nonetheless. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that was already disappointing. Like that, high moment of OU is back. OU has the presence that we want nationally, completely decimated. And then they go into this year and, they have a quarterback who's probably top 10 in the Heisman predictions going into the year. He has a very underwhelming game against Houston. And I talked to one of my friends about that game. He said, don't look too much into that. How can I? They won by 2 points. Came down to the last 3 minutes of the game against Houston. And then they did the exact same thing to Tulane, which is also not a good team.
No.
So, I put a lot of credit on last year's success on the offensive coordinator. He was a gunslinger. He could figure out how to throw the ball.
Yeah.
They have no idea what they want to do. And it's going to be abysmal. People talk about Florida and Mississippi State being huge disappointments this year. I think Oklahoma's going to drop at least 5.
Yeah. No, I think they're gonna really struggle in the SEC, and the Tennessee train just keeps rolling. And you were talking about how they probably didn't want to show show a lot of their stuff. I also think both their tackles were pretty banged up. They don't want to get Nico killed just dropping back for no reason. But man, I think this Tennessee team is going to be a tough out in the playoff this year.
Did you think Dylan Raiola or Nico looked better in their first major big game?
I don't know. It's so tough because Tennessee's offense didn't do a lot. I thought Dylan Raiola played really well. I know he missed a throw at the end, but I thought he played a very he's really, really good. I thought he's shown a little more right now, but I think that's also just because, Tennessee took one deep shot.
I'd be very happy if I was, Matt Rule in the way Dylan is playing. I think that game is a 50-50 game. Going back to Nebraska, Illinois really quick. I think that's a 50-50 game 100 times. Right? They're splitting that one 50-50. I think they're two really, really evenly matched games. I think Tennessee, Oklahoma's 99-1 type thing. I don't see a situation where Tennessee loses that game. I think that Tennessee is as good as it gets, and I'm curious at what point are they going to get the national spotlight that they deserve? This is not the 2021 or 2022, Tennessee, where they're just throwing the ball to that skinny wide receiver
Hyatt.
Hyatt.
Yeah.
This is a different team. This is a well put together team, and Georgia. I think Georgia's their next big one, and they're going to see them.
Yeah. Moving on, let's do Utah, Oklahoma State. Kind of a gross game. No, not kind of. Was a gross game. No Cam Rising, and I think we talked last week, and we both said no Cam Rising, no way they win this game, but they pulled it out. I think Kyle Whittingham might be the best coach in the country at making the most out of the least he has, man. I think year in and year out, tragedy seems to always happen with that team. Guys get hurt, guys are down, and they just find ways to win. And I think their defense just mauls you up front, man football.
Their first four in their box players are really, really talented. The fact that the Oklahoma State Cowboys couldn't even run the ball goes to show that when you can't run the ball, there's not much you can do. Right? You can't run the ball. There's no RPOs. You can't run the ball. There's no play action. There's no deep ball, because they know you can't stop it or you can't run them on it. I was very surprised to see Cam Rising not play. I think that just goes to show with how confident they are as a team and as a unit. I think that Utah is a really, really good team. And with K-State losing against BYU in a shocker, I think the Big 12 is theirs as the taking. I think they were the preseason favorite. And I think that they continue their path to the Big 12 championship.
Let's talk about K-State in a second, but I want to ask you this. Where's Ollie Gordon? Ollie Gordon came into the season as this projected Heisman candidate, projected All-American, and man, they haven't gotten him going.
Is it a touches thing? Because if I remember correctly, five out of their 6 front, including the tight end, are 4-year starters. They've on average started 35 games or something disgusting. And where is he? If you have this, you're telling me you're not offensively minded enough to figure out ways that you can get this guy the ball.
That was a 22-19 game too. That's not even like a shootout where we're just gunslinging, throwing the ball around. No. You don't run the ball. It's dude, that's a low scoring game. Just run Ollie into the ground against that.
Yeah. I think that, it goes to show that Utah's either really, really good or Oklahoma State just really underperformed. And, I'm going to go with the first one. I think that Utah is a really good team, but I don't understand this whole Ollie Gordon thing. He was very, very high on the Heisman odds, came out with an underwhelming game week 1, and then Arkansas week 2, he had, I think, 140 yards, which isn't that, outstanding in college football. I'm a little bit disappointed by the Cowboys. I thought that they would be better this year. I thought that matchup would have been better, a little bit more entertaining. I don't ever call college football boring, but that game wasn't all that much fun to watch.
That was a rock fight. That was gross.
Yeah.
And I think the Big 12 is so up in the air right now because you got to give Utah, I guess, the leg up. Iowa State hasn't looked too bad. They beat Iowa.
They're a dark horse contender for the Big 12.
What about BYU? Do they embarrassed Kansas State this week? Well,
I went to bed. That game started at 10:30, so it was about an hour and a half after my bedtime. And I went to bed. I think Kansas State was up 7-0. And I was like, oh, good. That's good to see. And I woke up and I saw a tweet that said something on the lines of, congrats to the Cougars. Y'all played really well. And I was like, there's just no way we're talking about the same team. That's got to be Houston, right? That's got to be someone else, right? They cannot be the BYU Cougars against my Wildcats. But, they smashed them. There was no sense of grittiness. There's no sense of wanting to play in that game in Kansas State. I was very, very surprised to see that. It goes to show that when there's so much internal pressure on winning every single game to win a conference, how quickly that goes sour in those games that you should have won and you're not. When you're constantly thinking in your heads, if we don't win this game, we don't stand a chance to win the conference rather than just win the game, instantly you become less and less credible. Instead of it's game by game, you have just this end goal, which is not a good way to go about it. But yeah, no, I think the Big 12 overall, Johnny, is a very mid-level conference.
Mediocre across the board. Like, I don't think you have a true powerhouse in the conference right now, but I think you've got a couple teams that will be a problem in the playoff, whereas just solid enough where if you get them in a low scoring game, they could get you. They could,
I think the interesting about it is it's all a fight to the top, right? Between those 3 or 4 teams that we just mentioned. But in reality, if you were to blind rank those all 12 playoff teams, I could imagine, and I would not be all that shocked that the Big 12 champion is 8 or 9 when everything's said and done. I don't think that they're that good. I don't think that anyone is that stout. I think defenses are really, really good, but I don't think they're good enough to stop Ohio State. I don't think they're good enough to stop some of these really good teams. And I think another team that you haven't mentioned yet is UCF. I know you hate KJ, but Johnny, they're averaging almost 280 yards on the ground a game.
No, they pound the ball. And I never said I don't like KJ Jefferson, but I do know their running game's legit. They spread the ball out. They do a lot of motion, a lot of jet sweep kind of action type stuff. And I think that they could be if they keep winning.
That would be such a crazy sequence of events because I'll never forget in 2017 when they claimed they were national champions because they went 12-0 and weren't included in the playoffs. And rightfully so, I think that was a little bit BS, but nonetheless, and then Cincinnati does it 2 years later, I believe it was, or 1 year later. But how full circle would that be if UCF makes it in and kind of makes a little bit of a run in the playoffs this year? Absolutely remarkable. Speaking of running the ball 50 times a game, gosh, I hate that team up north
so much. I hate Michigan, and what a win! I want to start.
I don't know. That game caught me so off guard because I guess I knew Michigan's defense was good. I did not realize their pass rush was that good. Their pass rush made the offensive tackles look foolish.
Vicious, It's crazy.
You know that, out of 70 plays, they're going to run the ball 63 times. And they literally, and I thought USC's adjustment going into the second half was really, really good. I think they were able to connect to the wide receivers better. They stopped doing RPOs and play actions and started hitting across the middle of the field. They were able to run it. And then it literally just, I don't know what happened. They had the game won.
The thing is this, and against a team that runs it the way Michigan runs it, you can't let up a defensive or special teams touchdown. You can't. And I know if you're the wide receiver, you got to come back to the ball a little more there, but also you just can't. If you're Millen, you can't do that because that's what this Michigan team is going to win games off of. Just win games off of, scoring maybe 10 points on offense and getting 17 with just a defensive touchdown. You know what I mean? And that Michigan's defense is so good. But one thing that stuck out to me was we saw the LSU game and we're like, hey, maybe this is a new Lincoln Riley. But the longer this season goes, I think we're going to see that LSU is a lot more average than we thought they were in the moment.
Yep.
And I think it's same old Lincoln Riley problems. Pushed around on defense, can't tackle when it matters, couldn't tackle on that last drive. And at the same time, bad coaching. That last possession they had, they got the ball back with 5 minutes left, winning the game. They took barely any time off the clock. I think they had an incompletion. They ran the ball once. They did a screen that got blown up. You got to take more, especially against a team that can't throw the ball. If Michigan can't throw the ball, takes the ball.
No matter how much time is left, 2 scores in the fourth quarter, you're good as done.
Or just run the ball, take time off because they're not going to be able to run the ball down the field if there's 2 minutes left. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't.
and I agree with you full. Where I disagree with you a little bit, Johnny, is I don't think that same old Lincoln Riley. I thought I saw stuff out of that team that I haven't seen out of any Lincoln Riley teams going all the way back to Baker Mayfield when they played Georgia. And everyone knew that Georgia was going to beat them, but it was like, can they keep them close? And they did. They went into overtime.
Yeah.
And the score was like 62 to 56 or whatever, crazy score it was. But, I thought that this showed that they're making the steps in the right direction. They played – I would say that Michigan football is as tough-nosed as it gets in college football. They're, I would say, top 3 in tough-nosed, category.
Yep.
In that USC was one single play away from winning that tough-nosed football game. And, yes, I agree with you. It was bad coaching, and I really think that they should have, why they didn't have any more people in the box on that 4th and 1. They had no cover, no over the top coverage there for any kind of break and run. I don't understand that. But I was pleasantly surprised by USC playing so well. I also thought I was going to see more offensive strength out of them. I thought I was going to see, a little bit more uniqueness in their offensive game plan, I guess is a good way to put it. The plays that I was seeing were just like, what are we doing here? And where I'm going with that is the entire time I was on the edge of my seat waiting for them to break one, waiting for them to finally figure it out. And somehow, some way, Michigan was disrupting every single thing they did. Drop back passes, screens were getting, chopped up, blowing up their blockers. They couldn't get a pass off. They couldn't get, a draw off. They couldn't get anything. And I'm thinking in my head, is this bad coaching or really, really good defense? And I'm going to go with the bad coaching one because I really don't think that Michigan's defense is that good that they could disrupt an entire half of football the way they did. Because you know how effortless it was for Texas to score, right? Texas could have hammered and dropped 40 on them if they wanted to. Basically, I'm not surprised the game went as it did. I guess the spread was a lot more accurate than I would have anticipated. Yes, I did lose money because I dragged USC out. But, I'm not going to put him in the same old Lincoln category. I still think that the Big Ten is open, to make the playoffs as that third team. I don't think USC is it, but, I think USC is definitely making the tough team. Speaking of the playoffs, Johnny, we have 4 teams from the 4 playoffs. We have, 4 teams from the 4 major conferences.
Yeah.
And then the 8 teams are all at-large bids, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So it could realistically be 3 from the Big Ten, 3 from the ACC, that's 6, plus 2 from the ACC and the Big 12, and then you have your non-power 5, which will be JMU or Texas State, and then is that 10?
Yeah, what about Boise? What's Boise's record? I think they could also
get Boise's doing good. I really do think Texas State dropped a tough one against Arizona, I believe it was, but I still do think that they have a really good chance. That JMU game was an absolute shootout. And I'm not.
Yeah, that was basketball. That was a basketball score, 70-50.
Dude, it literally was just that was crazy. Backyard. That's what you and I play on around Thanksgiving. That's what that was.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I might have been more defense in our Thanksgiving game than there was on that.
No, that was.
Wait a second. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I'm curious. Do you think one of the SEC or the Big Ten gets 4 in? Another technical difficulty, Johnny.
Yeah, we're back. We're trudging through it all.
We're going into week 5.
Yes.
We have a few games I would like your opinion on.
Yep.
We'll talk about them and then we'll do our picks as we go. So we're going to start with, SEC, a preview of a possible SEC championship game. The Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Georgia Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to avoid this with like a 10-foot pole, Johnny. I don't know what I can expect out of this game. I could see it go any which direction. It's a 2-point towards Georgia. They're going into Denny Bryant Stadium. What do you make of it?
I like Georgia this week. That's my pick. I think it's going to be a close game, though. I think the way I've been thinking about it is think about this Alabama offense, why they work, what makes them run. I think a lot has to start with Ryan Williams. First of all, How is he 17? How I don't get the reclassification thing in high school. I don't really get how that works. It can just be like, well, now I'm the grade above.
I think they take like an extra course or whatever. It's so crazy that he is dominating college football at 17 years old. And when I was 17, I, I didn't even have a car. I had no responsibilities. Like,
I was I was doing like I was playing like JV cornerback at
yeah,
17. Like,
yeah, like I could barely bench 225 pounds. Like, and this kid's running probably a 4.4, and he's dominating SEC teams. It just blows my mind how athletic these kids are at such a young age.
yeah, but so what I mean bringing him up is I think they've been really successful this year going deep with him, especially, but just the deep ball. And what the deep ball does is it opens up a lot of quarterback runs with Jalen Milroe, and then also running it with their two running backs, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. And I think that they've been so successful running the ball because they've been able to really spread the field. The thing with Georgia is they've got two studs in the secondary, Mikael Williams and Malachi Starks. I think those guys are too good on the back end to just let Alabama get whatever they want with the deep ball. And I think that's going to really cause Bama to struggle running the ball. Like, think about Georgia the past like 5 years. Is like, yep, everyone says they lose everyone to the draft, but then they reload like
Yeah.
crazy up front. And I think Alabama's going to have a really hard time scoring the ball.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it comes down to the quarterback, Jalen Milroe. I think that their wins and their losses come down to his play. You know, he had an absolutely detrimental fumble against the Wolverines last year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's like they were up by a score. It's like 2nd and 4. He got the first down and then literally just lost the ball. Michigan goes down, ties it. But when he plays really good, the team looks unstoppable. You know, I had him as one of my Heisman favorites going into the year. You know, I don't love what he's done. I thought Deboer would have had him gunslinging a little bit better than he is. I'm not overly impressed with the Crimson Tide. I'm not rooting against them because I love Alabama, but I just think that Georgia is really that good, and everyone's kind of, you know, hesitant because of that Kentucky game. I'm not hesitant at all. You know, when teams are truly a pick-em, I go to quarterback play and I go to coaches. I think that Carson Beck plays better than Jalen Milroe, and I think that Kirby is a better coach than Deboer. Therefore, I got to take Georgia. I would predict a 7-10-point win.
Dude, they haven't let up a touchdown all year, which is pretty crazy seeing they played Clemson. Like, you know, they played not just
I didn't realize that. Yeah, no, their defense is remarkable year in and year out. They are truly unstoppable. So then we have a game that you are going to be in attendance for. Penn State.
Boots on the ground.
Crazy. Yes. This game is a big game. I would have never predicted it to be a big game. The spread just simply cannot be right. There's just no way that Penn State is an 18-point favorite, Johnny.
You said 18? 18's a lot of points.
18 is a lot of points. I'm assuming they're anticipating a garbage time touchdown. That it's like a 14-point game, and, you know, there's 2.5 minutes left. All they got to do is run out the clock. Instead, one of their backup running backs runs for a 62-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I don't know. And this is no disrespect to Illinois, because I think Illinois is a great team. I think they've got a really good defense that in the first half is really going to challenge Drew Aller. But I think they're just not really talented enough on offense. I think Altmaier's great. I think he doesn't.
You thought Bowling Green was talented enough on offense to be in the lead at halftime?
Hey, you just told me that Kentucky's 1-point loss to Georgia meant nothing. So I'm going to say that game meant nothing. But
I'm just saying it's hard to deny how effortless Bowling Green drove up and down Penn State.
That's true. That's true. I think that was a look at
that Illinois is a really good team. I would say that Penn State, Illinois, and Nebraska are all very comparable in terms of their play, in terms of their talent. I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I know that Penn State is a step ahead of the others, but I am saying that 18 points just seems ridiculous. That is the type of spread that I would expect from Ohio State or Oregon, not Penn State.
Well, I just think when you look at I just really don't think Illinois is going to be able to move the ball. I think you're right. They didn't look great against Bowling Green, but I think this defense is way too talented. And this is a big game. I think it's a night game. They're going to get up for it. I think Abdul Carter, Dennis Sutton, Kobe King, Tony Roja, those like all guys get after the quarterback. I think they will. I think they'll put pressure on Altmaier that he hasn't seen all season, and they'll force turnovers. And then on offense, I think Nebraska didn't have enough, like just as many guys as Penn State does on offense. I think both those running backs on Penn State, I think, are going to be playing on Sundays next year. And I think Tyler Warren, the tight end, is putting together an All-American season. Like
he's really playing well. I think that the best chance for Penn State to cover 18 is the assumption that Illinois is going to be tired, in the sense of they just played a time game last Friday. They're coming again on the road against a very hyped up Penn State crew. I think that that'll be a little bit detrimental, but on the flip side, they're coming off a Friday night game. They get an extra day's worth of rest. I got to take Illinois at plus 18. I think that I'm not going to say my next statement. I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to hold off and say Illinois plus 18, and I'll save that statement for about 10 more minutes from now.
I'm gonna take Penn State.
Surprise, surprise.
I'm gonna be there. It's gonna be electric. I think they're gonna really show the nation that they're going for a title this year.
We got Louisville versus Notre Dame. This game is a rematch of a very disappointing outing by Notre Dame last year, where they got the ball run up and down their throats in Louisville. You and I were in attendance. It was a record attendance for Louisville. It was an awesome environment, sweet seats, the whole 9 yards. It was so much fun to be there. I think this Louisville team is really, really good. I think if Notre Dame keeps Riley Leonard in at quarterback, they don't stand a chance this season. They need to make the switch to Kevin Minchie. And I watched a little bit of the game last week, and Riley Leonard goes 0 for 2 in his first 2 passes. Simple 5-yard out routes that you and I could throw and hit 8 out of 10 times. The dude literally can't throw the ball to the broadside of a barn. He stinks. The only thing he's good at is running the ball. I think it goes to say that they don't know what to do with him, but they're way too invested, probably NIL-wise. They need to make the switch. And, it just goes to show that Marcus Freeman is way too prideful to make the switch. He got booed when they sent out the punt team.
Yeah.
And, that goes to show that, like, everyone wants Kevin Minchie in there, who's the backup who went in against Purdue and went 7 for 10, 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a ridiculous stat line. But they don't know what to do with Riley Leonard. It's not going to take them far. All he can do is run the ball. Dude can't throw for hell. I got to take Notre Dame because I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm going to take Notre Dame the same way you took Penn State. At home means a lot to Notre Dame, but it's 6 points.
I'm going to take Notre Dame too, just because I love their defense still. And that was such a disappointing loss against Northern Illinois, but I think their defense is really talented. And I think Louisville loves to pass the ball, and I just really don't think they're going to be able to against this really good secondary. And I just think at home, I think Notre Dame is going to win this by 10.
I wish the at home meant more to Marcus Freeman's team than it did with Brian Kelly's.
I don't trust Louisville's quarterback either. I want to say that too. Tyler Shaw. I think he's been an absolute journeyman in college football. Oregon. He's there. He went at Texas Tech. I think he's going to get eaten up by the secondary. And I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying there. They should get up for a home game. I know it's so disappointing losing to Northern Illinois at home, but they should get up.
I think the thing that still resonated with me with Notre Dame, Johnny, is that it's not the first time this has happened. Like, if we lost this game against, let's say we were 4-0 at this point and we lose to Louisville, it's like, it sucks. Louisville's a really good team. But the fact that it was an inferior opponent and it's not the first time we've seen it still leaves such a sour taste in my mouth. That's really, really hard for me to shake. And I don't think the only thing that'll make me kind of shake it is if we go into USC and absolutely dominate them, and we make the playoff and win a playoff game. That's the only way that I'm going to count this season as a non-disappointing way for Marcus Freeman to save the year. We have another team, we've talked about both these teams a little bit already today. We have Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Kansas State is a 4.5-point favorite. If they beat BYU, that would have been 10.5, but an absolutely terrible outing by Kansas State. They are just under 5-point favorites.
I'm taking Oklahoma State to cover. Wow. I was so disappointed with Kansas State last week, to the point where I know this is kind of a stupid title, but I think the state of Kansas might be the most disappointing state in college football this year. Kansas and Kansas State both came in with good high expectations, and both have looked bad. And maybe BYU is legit, and maybe they win the Big 12. But man, did Kansas State look bad last week. And I think Oklahoma State, they just went through a rock fight, as we said earlier, with Utah. I think their defense looked pretty good last week. I think they're going to score enough. I also think they just gonna hear all. I think Mike Gundy's gonna hear all the haters and just ride Ollie Gordon this week.
In the same fashion that Illinois is 2 tough road games in a row, I think Oklahoma State has 2 tough ones in a row. Going into K-State's not an easy task. I think they put probably all their eggs into the Utah basket. This is a tough back-to-back game. I got to take Kansas State. I think it's a get right position. They got to, act like they're the real deal in the Big 12. Big comeback game for them.
Yep.
We have Ole Miss versus Kentucky. Spread is -17.5, favoring Ole Miss.
Yeah, this one I've been going back and forth with because I think this is a real big letdown spot for Kansas State. Kind of like the thing what you just said about Oklahoma State. I think Kentucky got so up for that Georgia game. I don't think they're going to match that energy against Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has kind of been flying under the radar because they really haven't played anyone yet. But I think Jackson Dart and that offense is so electric. I think also Walter Nolan is an absolute game wrecker at D tackle. He was that transfer from Texas A&M that was part of that legendary Jimbo Fisher recruiting class. He's an absolute game wrecker, and I think Ole Miss is a team that before the season everyone had in their mouth, and now just because they haven't really played anyone, that no one's really been talking about them. But I think they're so talented.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that Kentucky doesn't have anything left in the tank. I think Ole Miss is a really good team that people need to start respecting more. The SEC is so deep in talent between Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss. Who else am I missing? There's another really good one that I'm missing here.
You're Texas. What did you say, Texas? What about Mizzou? Mizzou's been disappointing.
Yeah, Mizzou. That team 2 teams deeper than I think. So we have Georgia, Bama, Texas, Mizzou, Ole Miss. That's 5 teams. All 5 could really be in the playoff picture, and I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I just think a couple of them will get cannibalized by the schedule.
Oh yeah, and I think it'll be Mizzou, and I think that it'll probably be Bama if I had to guess. But that's a conversation for a different day. I do think that Ole Miss is a really good team. I think that they are a top 3 SEC team. I think they're a top 5 team in the nation. I think that they go and show that when they beat Kentucky by 25. And everyone starts to question is Georgia legit or is Ole Miss legit?
Yeah.
Then we have, and I threw this one on there just because I want to know your opinion. Ohio State hasn't played anyone all year. I'm not even sure you and I have talked about Ohio State yet because they have played literally no one all year.
Same thing I just said about Ole Miss. It's the same thing. They haven't played
anyone. And everyone's giving Ohio State the benefit of the doubt. In Ohio State, in the same fashion that Oregon has, if they're not beating a team 56-7 every single week right now and they're not paying anyone, I'm like, ooh, they're disappointing me.
Yeah, people think they're bums if they don't score 70 points.
It's crazy the standard that you have at Ohio State, at Oregon, at Bama, at Georgia, and Clemson. But, if Notre Dame was beating people the same way that Ohio State was, I'd be like, this is one of the best Notre Dame teams I've ever seen.
Yeah, same with Penn State.
It's a home game against Michigan State. They're a 24-point favorite. Michigan State's coming off a tough loss against BC. I think that they're in a possible trap game situation here.
Yeah, I don't think they lose it, but I think Michigan State could cover just because I really like Jonathan Smith, the head coach. I thought he did a great job at Oregon State. I think he's going to do a great job at Michigan State. And I really love Ohio State this year. I just think that's so many points, especially, I think they'll put it away early. I think they'll take starters out. And I think Michigan State will save face in the second half and just close the gap.
Yeah, I think that I love trap games in the sense of, one, we could see that a team has some serious vulnerabilities, and 2, on the flip side, that you think it could possibly be a trap game and they end up winning 50-0. So I love the situation that Ohio State's in, that they could shut me up, by their play on Saturday, or they could make me even more doubtful than they already are. I'm already seeing the kind of Chip Kelly mannerisms in their offense with the run game, the power and the G&O schemes, which is really fun to see. I'm going to take Michigan State just because I like Michigan State.
I think
that 24 points is a lot of points, and Michigan State's a really, really good team.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Johnny, Cheesecake Challenge. Who do you have for your upset of the week?
Okay, you can check me on this because I was pretty confused when I saw this line, but I'm going to take BYU +3 at Baylor.
Yeah.
I thought there was no way after last week BYU would be
+3.5, Johnny. We would round that down to 3.
I'm definitely taking BYU there. I thought they looked great last week.
It's in Baylor. It's in Texas. So that's
know.
And you got to assume that Baylor is in a tough spot because they just came off one of the biggest wins in the last couple of years. And then on the flip side, Baylor just got one of the worst losses.
Oh, yes. I thought I got mixed up when you were starting that conversation. Yeah, no, I think that was such an emotional loss for Baylor. Like, they had that game. If they beat Colorado, I think I'm more hesitant to take this game, but I think they freaking just blew that game like I've never seen before, and then at the same time, I thought Kansas State was gonna roll
Yeah.
BYU, and they showed some absolute fight. They spread the ball over the field. That was one of the best punt returns I've ever seen in my life. And
Yeah,
I think,
that was crazy. I'm curious how many yards it was.
oh
It's
my
got to have been
gosh.
35 yards, 140 yards full sprint.
Yeah, no, he ran like 20 yards backwards and 20
20 yards
yards to the
back, then he went.
sides, and then
No,
100.
definitely way more than that because he ended at like the 3 yard line, went sideline to sideline, and then went upfield
It was
for the
crazy.
scores. Crazy athleticism. So my cheesecake factory pick of the week. If I hit this, you might as well just call it a year because there's no way you catch up. Give me Illinois, the big upset. Just rooting
That
against your Penn State. I think that they get exposed this week. I think that this team really has their eyes set in competing for the Big Ten. I am drinking that Kool-Aid like nothing I've ever felt. I really like Illinois. I think they're a really, really good team. No offense to your Penn State and Nittany Lions. I don't think that they're that good of a team. I think that once again, just like Ohio State, I said a minute ago, they have the opportunity, and I'll be the first one to say it, I will shut up about Penn State if they go and win by 18.
You know
But
what?
if it is a one possession, Johnny, if it is a one possession game or less, I think I should go as far to say you should be required to buy an Illinois sweatshirt and wear it next week on the pod.
Dude, Bielema hasn't been relevant since 2012 with Wisconsin. He was a joke at Arkansas, and he's gonna get exposed this
Do you not
week.
believe in second chances?
No, no, no. They're gonna get run off the field.
Bias.
That's a hater pick you just did. It's the dark arts, but you know what? I like it.
When you
I
have a
love it.
comfortable lead like I do, you have room to play. I do think that game is a lot closer. It's a really, really fun slate. I think we're all counting down till October 12th, where we have Ohio State versus Oregon. We have Penn State, Michigan, I believe, is that week. We
Yeah,
have
I
Ole
think
Miss, Texas, maybe.
there's
That
like
that
4
slew of
games that
games
week.
is going to be
Might be Georgia,
remarkable.
Texas. There
Georgia,
there's
Texas,
some
that's what it is.
there's some
You know,
great games, yeah. I'm
that week is
excited.
going to be so much fun. I'm legit going to be growing roots into my couch at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's going to be a fun weekend. We'll touch base, and best of luck with your Penn State. When do you leave?
Friday, you
Woo.
know, taking a half day driving up, taking a half day off work, driving up 7 hours, driving down. Should be a good road trip.
Yeah, definitely. Get some road cigars going and get the
Oh,
radio.
yeah,
Nothing better
for
than that.
sure, for sure.
All right, Johnny. We'll talk more next week.
Okay, see ya.